Good evening. I want to thank each of you for coming and talking about something that's near and dear to my heart. I want to start out tonight presenting you with a little bit of factual information maybe you didn't know about. 34% of new HIV cases in this nation include the teenage sexual activity bracket. 34%, a staggering number. That is the highest bracket, and it includes teenagers in that bracket. Why is this? It's because since 2005 there has been a drastic increase in sexual activity among teenagers in our nation. This comes from a 10-year decline, but is now on the incline, and we need to do something about it. It is a social problem. It's a major problem. It's time for our legislators, our families, our schools, our parents to take into consideration the means and methods on reducing sexual activity among teenagers right now. This is a serious issue. One of the major problems presented with this is teen pregnancy. Teen pregnancy rates have gone up consistently in the last 5 and 6 years. During the early 90s, when teen sexual activity was at its peak in the United States, 68% of seniors were sexually active. That's a staggering number. 68%. 7 out of every 10. During the late 90s and early 2000s, that number had dropped to nearly 45% by 2004. In the last 5 years, that number has risen almost to the same level that it was at in the early 90s. The reason for this is unknown, but what we do know is the drastic consequences that are happening because of it. When I was younger, I was part of the age group that experienced this sexual upbringing in the early 90s. When I was in 8th grade, I learned about sexual activity. Young men my age were bragging about their sexual exploits. I found it disturbing. My parents had taught me that this was not proper and that I had control over myself and I could choose. Young men my age were not choosing to do that. That did go down for 10 years during a certain period when special education was given on means to control it. During this increased sexual activity, however, there is another shocking statistic, and that is in teen pregnancies. During the early 90s, 4% of teenage females were pregnant or were teen mothers. By 2001, that number had dropped to 1%. It stayed 1% through 2004, but by 2006, that number had jumped to 7%, higher than it had ever been. Of that number, of those teen mothers, 50% have abortions. 50%, a staggering statistic. This raises health care costs for everyone, not just for the families of these teen mothers. This raises health care costs for you and for me. This causes serious problems with families, causes stress on the mothers. Often these mothers have to leave school, quit school to care for their babies if they choose to keep them. Some schools even provide daycare for teen mothers. That comes out of your and my taxpayer dollars. I don't get daycare for my children when I go to work and I pay taxes. Why should these teen mothers get daycare so they can go to school? It's an unfair system, and there's means and methods for controlling it. Another major problem with this is that 80% of all teen mothers end up on welfare. 80% end up on taxpayer dollars. You and me supporting these teen mothers are people who were teen mothers. Another amazing statistic. This translates to billions of dollars spent on welfare for teen mothers and previously teen mothers. Probably the most shocking statistic from this teen outburst of sexual activity is the drastic increase in STDs. 50% of new STD cases are among teens. 50% of all STD cases that are reported in this year will be teenagers. Another amazing fact provided by the Center for Disease Control is that 1 out of every 4 teen girls has an active STD at this time. These are serious health concerns, serious risks. They're social problems. These are not problems just for families to solve. These are problems that everyone needs to solve. They raise our costs as taxpayers. They raise the cost of health care across the board. They cause mothers and families to go through massive amounts of stress and strain. They cause schools to lose good, quality, talented students. They deprive our workforce of these students. They cause schools to go to extra means and methods to care for these children when these mothers choose to keep them. This is a serious social problem, and it's something that we as citizens need to look at, and that we as citizens need to push our lawmakers into action about. I want to thank you each for coming here and for taking the time. I also want to ask if any of you happen to have any questions.
No.
I appreciate your time.